In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at 5 effects of a stiff thoracic spine. Now, just as a quick intro, we've got the thoracic spine here, which is basically the middle part of the back. We've then got the 7 vertebrae of the cervical spine, which is the neck, and then the 5 of the lumbar spine. But the ones we're going to be focusing on are the 12 thoracic vertebra. What's going to follow this tutorial is a 5-minute spinal extension mobilizer, so a short workout or workshop on how to keep a healthy thoracic spine and keep it moving and extended. So for this part of the tutorial, what we're going to do is look at the different structures of the thoracic spine, then we're going to look at some functions of it. So we'll look at the posture, we'll look at the breathing, and we'll look at the movement of it. What we'll then be able to do is bring that together into the 5 effects of a stiff thoracic spine. We're going to keep the structures of the thoracic spine, or the T-spine, as you can see there. We're going to keep it relatively simple. So as I've mentioned, we've got the 12 vertebra of the thoracic spine, which is here up to here. So essentially from the bottom of the ribs to the top of the ribs. Then we've got the costovertebral joints. So we've got a bird's eye view of a vertebra here. So you've got transverse process, spinous process, vertebral body, spinal canal. Then you've got the rib out here and out here. So we've got then 2 joints, one here and one here. And this is a slightly magnified example of that joint. Now obviously these joints need to be able to move, so they will glide. They will be gliding when we inhale during breathing. So that's sort of the first part of function coming into it. But also as the spine extends and rotates, these joints are going to need to rotate to be able to create that movement. Then we've got the muscles. Now I've sort of grouped the muscles together. So we've got deep spinal muscles. I won't necessarily go through the names of them, but basically what we've got here, this goes from spinous process to spinous process, and again here and here, and again here and here. Then we've got from spinous process to transverse process, which is sort of a diagonal, and then transverse process to transverse process here, here, and here. So these are the deep spinal muscles. These are our essentially proprioceptive muscles, detecting the changes in position of the spine. What we've then got is the erector spinae group, which are the muscles that are grouped essentially all along the length of the spine, from all the way down here, sort of the sacrum and the coccyx, to all the way up here onto the occipital bone at the top. And they are a group of muscles. It's not one muscle that goes all the way from sort of bottom to top or top to bottom. There are different muscles that cover lower to mid to upper, so on and so forth. So they're overlapping, but essentially it's one group of muscles which we're just going to call the erector spinae group. So these again will be affected. And then the final one I've just added in, rhomboid, because it will affect some of the movements that we are going to talk about. It's a little bit more indirect, and it's a little bit like a step removed from thoracic extension, but it will allow other movements to happen. And the rhomboid essentially goes from the spine out to the shoulder blade and the spine out to the shoulder blade. So it's in this area here. And what it allows is the shoulder blade to, in some respects, go down and around the rib cage. So we need a degree of mobility and flexibility through that muscle to allow the shoulder blade to move over the rib cage, and to get proper movement and proper extension through there, you need to be able to have an extended spine. And finally, before we get into the 5 effects, just quickly look at the movement of the thoracic spine. So as you can see here, the spine provides us with 50 degrees of rotation, or up to 50 degrees here, 26 of side bending. We've then got 25 degrees of extension, which is the main one that we're going to be focusing on. And then we've got 30 degrees of flexion, which is bending forward. So we've got rotation and extension, which are, let's just say, the 2 main ones. But the main focus for this one is the extension. And then we've got ability to side bend and flex as well. Now for the 5 effects. So as we've mentioned, we've got breathing. So if we've got a stiff thorax, which is the thoracic spine and the rib cage, so those costovertebral joints, it's going to reduce capacity in which we can breathe. So as you can see, I'm here, I've got my legs up, but what I'm trying to do with my fist on my stomach is trying to breathe from the abdomen, trying to get the diaphragm to pull down, suck air in to the lungs. Now what's going to happen when I do that is first of all my abdomen is going to expand, but then eventually my rib cage is going to expand. Now if those joints aren't moving effectively, it's going to affect how well they can expand, and then that in some respects is going to reduce the capacity, in so much as there isn't as much room for the diaphragm and the rib cage to suck air in, because that is essentially what is happening. It's more of a vacuum. So when your chest cavity expands, automatically air is sucked into the body. So if we can't expand it as far, we are going to have a reduced capacity, which is then going to have a knock-on effect to the cardiovascular system, so the heart and the lungs, and then also with regards to the muscles and the endurance and the cardiovascular capacity of the body. So it's going to affect endurance and things like that. Also, we can then go into stress levels with regards to the diaphragm working correctly, with the correct breathing, so on and so forth, but that's for another time. So again, we want to have a well-functioning thoracic spine to be able to have that greater capacity to suck air in as we inhale. When we then come on to posture, we'll sort of work our way, in some respects, down the body. So we're going to start with the head poke. So as you can see, again, I'm sat here at my desk and I've got a rounded spine. So if my spine is rounded, in order for me to be able to see my screen, what I have to do is I have to lift my head up. As I lift my head up, that's going to create excessive curvature in my neck or in my cervical spine, which is going to give me lordosis of my or hyperlordosis of my cervical spine. What will then happen is the chin will tend to poke out as well. So not only am I interfering with my breathing capacity, I'm also interfering with how the neck muscles work, how the deep neck flexors work, so on and so forth. What we then come on to are rounded shoulders, and as you can sort of see here, it's quite a natural thing. As I slouch forward, my shoulders will tend to go forward as well. What the body will then do is it will react in a certain way to tighten up the structures at the front of the shoulder to be able to stabilize that area. So that will be pec minor, that will be subscapularis. So we've got all these different structures which we may find tight here, but it's not necessarily because of this area. It's more to do with this area here. So again, if we've got stiffness through the thoracic spine and we find it difficult to sit up straight or stand up straight or breathe effectively, we're going to get these compensations, which is going to be tightness potentially through certain neck flexors and potentially through shoulder internal rotators as well. Then we're going to use the final image for arms can't get as far overhead. So this is where the rhomboids will come in. So you've got me here, but essentially doing an overhead squat. Now this isn't the ideal overhead squat, because there are factors that will affect it away from the spine. There is the ankle mobility down here. There is also femur length, tibial length, that will all affect how we can squat. Now with regards to the arms, being able to get them overhead. Now you heard me talk about before the rhomboids. Now when we extend the spine, what that allows to happen is the rhomboids to function more effectively, to allow the shoulder blade to go down. The shoulder blade to go down and around the rib cage. That is what will play a big part in the arms coming overhead. But the main thing from this is, if you look at my body, it's essentially a straight line all the way through. You may be able to say it's slightly forward, but essentially it's a straight line from my hip, shoulder, up to my wrists. So with regards to my arms being able to get overhead, we're kind of there. What we wouldn't want is it to be in this position. So with regards to the rhomboids, we've got the shoulder blade coming down and around, which is then allowing the shoulder joint to be able to move more effectively to get the arms overhead. But that can only come about if we've got extension through this thoracic spine. So if we get extension through the thoracic spine, you get the ripple effect of the rhomboids functioning more optimally, the shoulder blade being able to move, which is then allowing the arms to get overhead. Now again, as I mentioned at the start, this isn't the determining factor with regards to the squat, because we've got ankle mobility, length of the tibia, length of the femur, which is again going to affect it. You've also got hip flexor length, i.e. psoas, as well, which is going to affect it. And then the final one is, as we've kind of discussed, is reduce your squat depth. So again, if we are rounding through here, a part of that rounding, because not only have we got rhomboid which attaches into the thoracic spine, we've got the very top fibers of the psoas, which is going to attach into the thoracic spine. Now again, if we haven't got good extension there, that can be due to poor hip flexor length, i.e. poor psoas length, which is then going to pull us forward, and it's going to affect how we squat. Now the caveat with that is its proper technique. We may be able to get further down, but we may find that we get a hip wink or the lower back rounds or anything like that. So with regards to the 5 effects, so just as a quick summary, the 5 effects of a stiff thorax or a stiff thoracic spine is reducing the capacity to breathe, which is then going to have a ripple effect on the cardiovascular system and overall endurance. And then we've got posture, which is head poking forward, which is going to create an excessive lordosis of the neck. And then slightly more dysfunctional neck flexors. It's going to round the shoulders, create more compensations there. It's then going to have arms not getting over the head, which is going to affect the mobility of the shoulder girdle and the shoulder joint. And then finally, it's going to reduce squat depth, which is then going to have an effect on the hip joint as well. So hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully it's been useful. What you can now do is you can go through to the members area and you can go on to the 5-minute thoracic spine extension mobilizer.